What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the TCG Empire YouTube channel. Today we are going over Tech Tuesday. If you're new here, you're not sure what's going on. It's kind of where we take the deck of the week and we break it down, see what it loses to, things that you can play in order to improve your matchup into the deck of the week, and then some cards that you can play within the deck of the week in order to maybe better some of these counters. So I do have Zach here with me. He is the Prince of Darkness, as we all call him, because he just loves Darkrai. So I thought, what better way to, talk about these counters than with him. So he's going to be talking about some cards. I'm going to talk about some cards, and yeah, we're going to jump right into it. So the first card that we saw on Meta Monday as my matchup is Meowscarada EX. This card completely destroys Darkrai as a whole. We don't have anything that prevents weakness, and sadly everything within Darkrai is weak to grass. And it wouldn't be so bad if Meowscarada didn't have a good ability that lets it, place 3 damage counters on a Pokemon. This means that they can place 3 damage counters on your bench Darkrai, boss it up, and then hit it for 440 damage, which does one-shot you, and it can kind of get rid of a lot of momentum. So Meowscarada as a whole, if you run into it, you'll probably lose. You just have to hope that they whiff on a DTE or anything like that. But otherwise, Meowscarada just kind of shuts down the whole purpose of the deck. Next card Zach's going to talk about, because this is one of his favorite cards to run into with Darkrai, and it is Klefki. So what do you think of it, Zach?
So on the topic of shutting the entire deck down, God, this thing has already got me frazzled. Klefki really makes setting up very hard for Darkrai, because this thing will shut off Radiant Greninja, Squawkabilly, Moltres V. It makes it very hard to set up consistently. The benefit is that, if they're sitting behind a Klefki and you can, attach 2 energies and evolve into a V-Star, you can deal with it pretty easily. But it has one purpose in the meta, and it does it very well. And I really don't like seeing this card, but he's there for a reason, and he does it quite well.
Yeah, Klefki's kind of super annoying. So if you run into a double Klefki and you don't have energy to attach and evolve, just scoop up, go to the next game. But speaking of Klefki, we also have Spiritomb. Now it's not as bad, but it somewhat is. Spiritomb can just sit on the bench, and there's kind of no way to snipe within Darkrai, so it just kind of sits there. And with the Fettered of Misfortune, your basic Pokemon V in play have no abilities, so this means that you can't use things like Lumineon if you play it. Most lists don't. They play Squawk to get energy in the discard, but you also have to deal with the factor of it shutting off your Moltres, which is one of the key factors in setting up your board. You want to try and set up, 1 to 2 Moltres, that way you can get energy in the discard and put it on and run Dark Patch and stuff. So this card really does shut off a good portion of the consistency part of the deck. Next card, another one that just ruined your whole board state, is Path to the Peak. I'll let Zach talk about this one.
So actually, really quick, I just want to give an example about how good that Spiritomb can be. I know shutting off just like Moltres V might not seem that important, but I played against an Arceus Giratina deck the other day, and they had a Spiritomb sitting on the bench, and I whiffed a knockout by 1 energy just because Spiritomb was in play and I couldn't accelerate with Moltres. So just kind of keep that in mind, that Darkrai does need to hit for high numbers to get one-shots on certain things. So if you can shut down even 1 or 2 energies from being accelerated, it makes a big difference.
And then Path to the Peak is just
going back to Path. By this time we all know what this does. It's kind of run its course. I wish it would hurry up and rotate, but it shuts down the abilities. This really hinders Darkrai a lot, because like we said with Klefki, it shuts off Greninja, it shuts off Moltres, it shuts off Squawk, and this actually has the added benefit of shutting down Darkrai's V-Star power, Star Abyss, which can be how you kind of recover or push for those last little bits of damage. So Path to the Peak not only is good in the early game, but it's really good throughout the entirety of the game. And this card single-handedly turned what is arguably like an auto win in the Mew VMAX matchup and made me go to a game 3 top deck war just because of Path to the Peak being in play.
Yeah, Path is a disgusting card, especially when you don't have outs to it. And then finally, we do have Box of Disaster. Now, the reason why this is in here is because Darkrai does go for one-shots often, as Zach mentioned. So with Box of Disaster, you put a guaranteed 8 damage counters on, your opponent's active. And Darkrai only has 270 HP, so you're putting it down to 190, which is a lot easier for certain decks to hit, especially if they want to attack with, something that they might not ordinarily attack with, or if they're forced to. It just gives them the added benefit. Not to mention, if you're playing something like Arceus Meowscarada, we'll be looking at that for Trash Deck Thursday. If you have, Path in play and you have Box of Disasters on a Arceus and they take a knockout, it puts the damage counters on them, so Meowscarada can take the one-shot anyways. So it's a super solid card for the benefit that, you kind of punish Darkrai for doing what it does and being fast and setting up one-shots. So this kind of keeps it in check. So these are kind of the cards that, we can talk about as far as what you can run to beat Darkrai. You either run these cards or Darkrai kind of bricks itself. There's really no in between. So if you're looking for something fun to play, you can try Meowscarada. If you're looking for actual counters, try Klefki, Spiritomb, Path, things like that. And next, we're going to go into the cards that, you can actually kind of run to counter these counters. Now, they're not foolproof. They're probably not going to win the matchup for you if you run into these counters, but they're definitely something that you can take a look at. First card being Lost Vacuum. It's just good because A, it gets rid of Path, which, as we talked about, does shut off the deck. But also, if you run into something like Choice Belt, or you run into really anything like Gloves, or even Box of Disasters, you can Lost Vacuum into away, so you don't have to deal with it. So it's just kind of a foolproof card in dealing with the matchup as a whole if you run into Path. If you run into Klefki and Path, you're kind of sad and there's not much you can do. But aside from that, I think that's really it for the pick for that. But now we'll get into Picnic Basket. Zach is the one that mentioned this, so I'm going to let him talk about this.
Alrighty, so actually, once again, there is something I want to touch on with the vacuum.
I always forget stuff.
One reason why I personally really like vacuum over something like Worker or like high stadium counts is that in Darkrai specifically, you can actually go vacuum, get rid of Path, and then use Star Abyss to get back the vacuum immediately. So you already have a guaranteed out to another path rather than having to try and find another one later. So I think that's a real big strength that playing this card with Darkrai has specifically.
Yeah. Playing 2, just getting both back and saying no to Path is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, and then Picnic Basket was really the only thing I could kind of think of to put in for the Meowscarada, because Meowscarada's ability specifically has to target the bench, which means that in order to set up the one-shot, they're either having to put the damage on over, the course of many turns, or they're going to combo it with a boss. And if they combo it with the boss, then you're already losing a lot of tempo anyways. So if your opponent tries to spread the damage around, and then this is also really good into Lost Box as well. Picnic Basket can heal off that damage so that way that Meowscarada doesn't get the extra damage. And because it's an item, you can get it back with Star Abyss. So again, it's not foolproof, but it can at least try and swing that matchup a little bit in your favor.
And then finally, we have Escape Rope. Now, most Darkrai lists do play Escape Rope because you have quite a few things that you really don't want to start with. But when it comes to Escape Rope, you can actually try and maybe up your counts with it, because if you're going to run into Klefki, it means that you have the ability to switch it out of the active so that way you can start using your abilities. Or if they have Spiritomb on the bench and you really want to, knock it out, if it's the only thing on their bench, you can Escape Rope into it and take the knockout. So overall, it's really good, and it adds, the added momentum of kind of being a card that you can get back if you need to. So you can play less copies, but, just know that if you're going to play less copies but benefit from Darkrai's ability, you do only get the ability once per game. So it's kind of give and take. One of those guaranteed spots will be an Escape Rope if you feel like you need it. But Otherwise, I think that's kind of it for the text that you can run in Darkrai. Again, Darkrai kind of benefits from being as fast as it is. So when it comes to the overall ideas behind, how you're going to beat a matchup and stuff, it's really just about playing to your added benefit of being fast and being able to accelerate. And you just have to hope that you can kind of get a decent board going before your opponent starts to disrupt it. That way the disruption isn't as serious. But yeah, I think that's really it. So if you guys did enjoy today's video, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on post notifications. Is there anything else you want to say about Darkrai, Zach?
In its current form, Darkrai is very, very fun, but as Tyler has mentioned, it really can lose to itself, regardless of whatever kind of build you're going for. Because if you are going really hyper aggressive, then you're gonna have to be okay with losing out on a lot of resources to take advantage of that early aggression. So keep that in mind, but it is very powerful and it can do well as long as you draw well enough. But I don't think this is the current meta to try and seriously play it, but it definitely is something to keep on the back burner for the future.
Well, thank you for letting us know, Zach. You are the best person I know with playing Darkbox, because you always try and do your best with it. So again, thank you guys for watching, and yeah, I'll catch you guys in tomorrow's episode of What to Buy Wednesday.